Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the second special session of Jejuporam for Peace and Prosperity 2014. This is Jang Hae-won, the MC of the session. Thank you so much for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to commence the second special session under the theme of entrepreneurship and female leadership. Today, we have two remarkable female leaders who will share their insight and wisdom with us. The session will begin with a keynote speech by Ms. Carly Fiorina, who will later be joined by Minister Cho Yoon-sun of Gender Equality and Family for a special dialogue. After that, we will have Q&A, followed by photo opportunity with Ms. Fiorina. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce the speaker of the session. We can't discuss corporate female leadership without mentioning her name. A former CEO of Hewlett-Packard, Ms. Carly Fiorina was named as the most influential female CEO by Fortune magazine for 6 consecutive years. As the first ever female CEO of a global company in history, she is the living legend of female leadership. I'm sure you would also be excited to meet her, so without further ado, I would like to invite Ms. Fiorina to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome her with a round of applause.
Good morning. I am very pleased to return to Korea once again. This is my very first visit to the beautiful island of Jeju, but I have been coming to Korea and working in Korea for 25 years. And it is a great pleasure to be back. And it has been a great pleasure as well to see the changes that have occurred in Korea over the past 25 years. In that time, of course, Korea has become a leader in so many things, a leader in electronics, a leader in music. And one of the changes that pleases me most, of course, is to see so many young women here today and to recognize that women are also becoming leaders in Korean politics and business and society. Before I join your minister for a conversation, I want to talk a little bit about leadership, what it is, what it isn't. Let me say first that leadership is different than management. Management is very important, particularly in a business. Good management is when you produce acceptable results within known constraints and conditions. Management is the production of acceptable results within known constraints and conditions. But management is not leadership. Leadership changes constraints and conditions. In a business, leadership changes the competitive landscape. In other words, leadership changes the order of things. I began my business career as a secretary. When I first traveled to Korea 25 years ago, I met many young women who were secretaries. All of them wore white gloves. I did not wear white gloves as a secretary. But I, too, sat at a desk and typed and filed and answered the phones and served coffee or tea when I began. And when I was a secretary, I thought that leadership was about title, position. I thought that if you were someone with a big office, or a big title or a big car that you must be a leader. But I came to learn as I went on in my life and in my career that leadership is not about any of those things. There are many people with big titles and big offices and big cars who do not lead. And there are people who have none of those things who lead every day. Because leadership is about changing the order of things. Leadership is about making a positive difference. For example, I have seen women in desperate situations all over the world, women living in abject poverty, who, when given a chance to make a positive difference for themselves, their families, and their communities, become entrepreneurs and lead. Leaders, in fact, are made, not born. There are some people who will tell you that leaders are born. You know if someone's going to be a leader. They're just born that way. That is not true. No one thought I would be a leader when I was a secretary. I didn't think I would be a leader. Leaders are made. Leaders are made because sometimes circumstances force people to lead. Leaders are made in other circumstances because someone sees potential in them, because someone takes a chance on them. And in fact, that is what happened to me. When I was a secretary, sitting at my desk, typing, two men came to my desk one day and said, "We've been watching you. We think you could do something beyond type and file. Would you like to know what we do every day?" It was a small company I was working for, only 9 people. But those two men introduced me to business. They were the people who started me to think that maybe business was where I should go. They were leaders because they saw potential in me, and they helped unlock potential in me. And ultimately, of course, that is the highest calling of leadership, to change the order of things by unlocking potential in others. To change the order of things by seeing possibilities that others may not see and seizing those possibilities. This is the essence of leadership. This is also why leadership is difficult. Because if leaders change the order of things, leaders, by definition, must challenge the status quo. And the status quo is very powerful, always. It's not because people are bad. It's just that change is difficult. And the status quo, how things are, the current state, the current constraints, the current conditions, how things are, people who are succeeding in the status quo want to keep things as they are. It's human nature. And so leadership is difficult because in order to change things, in order to make a positive difference, in order to unlock potential, in order to see and seize possibilities, the status quo must be challenged. And when the status quo is challenged, resistance occurs. It's not because people are bad, it's because change is hard. And so leadership is difficult. Another truth about leadership: leaders are made, leaders unlock potential, leaders change the order of things, leadership is difficult. Leaders sometimes must decide things before they are obvious to everyone. Leaders know that there is a window of opportunity to change things, and so they act. But at that moment, not everyone knows that change is needed. There are some obvious examples of this from the world of business. Do you remember the American company named Kodak? Kodak was a great American company, a 100-year-old company. And they could have, they should have led in the new generation of digital photography, but they did not change in time. And by the time everyone realized that change was necessary in order for Kodak to lead, it was too late. There is a window of opportunity for change, a window of opportunity that leaders know they must take advantage of, but not everyone sees it. When I was at Hewlett-Packard, we acquired Compaq, a big company. It was a controversial decision because it was made in time, before everyone understood. Leadership is also difficult because a leader must balance many considerations. I am fond of saying that balance is the art of leadership. A leader cannot do only one thing. A leader must balance many things. In business, of course, a leader must balance shareholders, employees, customers, communities. But leaders in politics must balance, for example, the preservation of traditions with the need to build new habits. Traditions, the way things have always been done, are important to a culture, to a country, to a family. And yet tradition alone is not enough in order to lead in the 21st century. So what is the balance between the old and the new? It cannot be all old, and it cannot be all new. It is the balance. Another difficult balance that a leader must strike is between the short term and the long term. Sometimes it is easier to just concentrate on the short term, to get certain things done quickly, but without a vision of the long term, over time, the future will be sacrificed. Leadership must balance profit with safety and service. I know that is a debate that is going on in this country today, following the terrible tragedy of the ferry disaster. But that is a balance that leaders always think about. Short term, long term. Preservation of old traditions versus reinvention of new habits. Profit versus safety or service or growth. Balance is the art of leadership, and this is also why leadership is difficult. I said earlier that the highest calling of leadership is to unlock potential. The highest calling of leadership is to see and seize possibilities. When I was a young girl, 8 years old, my mother gave me something. It was a card. And the card said, "What you are is God's gift to you. What you make of yourself is your gift to God." I did not feel gifted as a young girl. I did not feel gifted as a college student. I felt shy, scared of many things. I felt as though all my friends were smarter, prettier, better. But what I learned was that I had gifts, and what I learned more importantly was that everyone has gifts. Everyone has gifts, and everyone has potential, and leaders know this. Human potential is the only limitless resource we have in this world. I have seen people in desperate circumstances with incredible gifts to make a positive difference. And so the goal of leadership now in every company, in every country, in every community is to unlock the human potential they have, because that is the only way we solve our problems. It is the only way we capture our opportunities. And before I close and invite the minister to join me, I would just say this. If we think about human potential as the one limitless resource we have, if we know, and I know through experience, that every problem is made better when leaders unlock human potential, focus people on a worthy goal, inspire them with a purpose that they can believe in. It's important that we recognize that women are the most underutilized resource in the world. Women are also the most subjugated people in the world. We have talked for a long time about including women, engaging women more as a matter of justice or equity. And of course, that is true. But mostly the inclusion and the engagement of women is just smart. It's in everyone's interests, because women, like men, have loads of potential. And to solve our problems and to capture our opportunities, we have to unlock that potential through leadership. Thank you very much, and now I will look forward to having the minister join me.
Thank you, Ms. Fiorina, for the inspiring speech. Ladies and gentlemen, please give her another round of applause. Thank you. As I mentioned in the beginning, ladies and gentlemen, we have invited a prominent female leader from Korea, who is none other than Minister Jo Yoon-sun of Gender Equality and Family, and she joined us for a special dialogue on female leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Her Excellency with a round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, Kylie.
Hello again.
Actually, it was so touching and impressive, the college speech this morning about leadership and the female, the kind of characters and the strength of the female and the female empowerment of females in society. Actually, I have followed Kali's career with great interest for many years, and it is always very entertaining and very amusing. And I'm very personally thrilled to have such a wonderful opportunity to talk with Carly. And I have so many questions to ask to her, but let's begin with some easy, personal ones. Actually, I know that Carly had majored in medieval history and philosophy. And actually, after graduating the college, Kali started with many things which is completely different from the medieval history and philosophy. And I'd like to ask you, what affects your major in your career?
So the study of medieval history and philosophy does not sound very practical. And in truth, it was not. And when I graduated with a degree in medieval history and philosophy, I was unemployable. So I told the minister I went to law school, but unlike her, I did not finish. I didn't like law school, so I quit. However, the most valuable course I took was a medieval philosophy course. And every week we had to read a very big book of philosophy, thousands of pages. And every week we had to summarize those thousands of pages into 2 pages, which we would give our professor. And so for me, the process was I would write 20 pages, and then I would write 10, and then I would write 5, and finally I would get it down to 2 pages. What I did not realize at the time is that I was learning how to distill lots of complicated information down to the core, down to the essence. And I was learning how to think through that distillation process and to write about it clearly. One of the most important skills that any leader needs is how to think, how to communicate. And importantly, in this 21st century, when we have so much information all the time about so many things, is to understand how to decide what is important and what is not. And every one of us is bombarded with information all day, every day, and the truth is most of it isn't very important. But some of it is. And figuring out the difference is what I learned many years ago in that philosophy class.
Wow, that's very interesting. Actually, I had a similar experience when I was working as a lawyer. And afterwards, I joined the private company and politics. And nowadays, I realize what I learned as a basic of working with people and thinking and interpret and persuade people is from my experience as a lawyer, from the first-year lawyer to the partners. And I think anything, what Kali wants to say is that anything and any experience of your life can be added, can be the strong kind of factor to make what you are.
Yes. In fact, it's such a good point. You know, I have done many things in my life, and when I was a young person, I did not have a clear path. So I have this philosophy degree, I go to law school, I quit law school, I run away to Italy to teach English for a year, I become a secretary. You can imagine my parents were a little concerned. But every single experience I had, I learned something from. I learned something about myself. I learned something about the people around me. And I would say that it's important to learn from every experience you have. And it's important also to do a really good job with whatever your job is, no matter how humble. If you do a really good job at the job you have, opportunity will knock. And then you have to be brave enough to answer the door.
Yeah, right. Actually, I think in the audience today, we have a lot of young students from high schools and the college. And then I see that so many young students at the college prepare themselves to get a job. But actually, same in the US and in Korea too, we are facing a lot of serious problem of lower employment rate for those college graduates. And in Korea, we have set up a great tax benefit and about $200 million funds to the youth startups, and to prepare every environment and ecosystem surrounding the startups for the young generation, be flexible and be more generous. However, we see sometimes that the entrepreneurial spirit is very lacking in the young generation. And Kali, can you talk about a little bit about what is entrepreneurial spirit and how can we cultivate it better?
So also in the United States, we now think a lot about the entrepreneurial spirit, because while the United States was built by entrepreneurs, and the backbone of our economy is small business, actually, although it is big business that is more famous. Small businesses are struggling now in the US, and entrepreneurialism is more difficult. The essence of entrepreneurship is risk-taking and creativity. And risk-taking requires mistake-making. And in many cases, people and the society around them, they want entrepreneurship, but they don't want the mistakes. They want the benefits of entrepreneurialism, but they're not quite sure they want the risk-taking. And they are two sides of the same coin. You know, there was a great American entrepreneur named Thomas Edison, who, of course, invented many things. And he used to say, there is no such thing as a mistake. There is no such thing as a failure. There's only finding out what not to do again. And that's true. You cannot advance. You cannot create something new, which is what entrepreneurship is all about, without making mistakes. The key is not to make the same mistake twice. And so for policymakers, for leaders in companies, it's important to create environments where mistakes can be made, where failure isn't fatal, where risks can be taken, knowing that not every risk will work out.
I see. Actually, Kali, you must have started your career in a very male-dominant organizations, and the procedure, you are promoted from the first year to the top-level CEO, and you have to deal with a lot of male colleagues. Actually, I have the same experience of starting my career as a first female associate at the law firm. And at the time, I thought that every critical information, I am isolated from every critical information and every important chances. So I had to deal with while I had to deal with the many male colleagues and bosses, and I have to learn how to communicate and how to get along well with male colleagues. And then, Kali, can you tell us, can you share us with any of your know-hows how to well communicate and how to well get along with the male colleagues in an organization?
So being successful in any organization, whether you are a man or a woman at the bottom or at the top, being successful in any organization requires getting along with your colleagues. Because nothing worthwhile is accomplished by a single person acting alone. Nothing worthwhile is accomplished by a single person acting alone. In other words, everything, particularly in a company, requires some teamwork. And so you have to get along with your colleagues. And if you are a young woman and all your colleagues are men, then you have to learn how to get along with them. And just as you did. And, you know, my very first meeting as a young, brand new employee at a big company called AT&T, All of my colleagues were male, and my very first meeting with our clients was in a strip club. That was a very uncomfortable situation for everyone involved. But here's what I would say. Now, of course, it's many years later. Now this is 2014. For men, I would say, be smart. It is smart to utilize all of the talent and the potential that women represent. If you want your companies and your country to prosper, you have to tap everyone's potential, including half of the nation. So men, be smart. Help everyone who works for you, including the women, unlock their potential by making sure they have access to the information and the tools that they need. And what I would say to women is be brave and be strong, because it is still different for us. Assume that you must get along with everyone, but recognize that you will need to be brave and be strong, because sometimes the people you need to get along with will have never had to get along with you before, and that makes it difficult.
I see. That is a very, 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 very touching comment and advice. Actually, about the leadership, it's always very, very happy to hear when Kali talks about leadership. Leadership is to unlock potential of people. In terms of leadership between men and women, Kali, can you talk a little bit about the female leadership? What is the more strong point of female leadership compared with the other male leadership in an organization?
So I'm always a little uncomfortable with trying to generalize between the differences of men leadership and women leadership, because I think there are many aspects of leadership that are the same for men or for women. Leaders unlock potential, leaders see possibilities, leaders communicate a vision of the future that is clear and compelling. These are things that are the same for men and for women. Leadership is not simply the exercise of command and control power. That is not leadership, that is management. But there is one difference, I think. I think women tend to first seek to collaborate with others. I think a woman's instinct is, let me collaborate, let me build a team. And actually that's quite important now, because our opportunities in our societies and our companies are very complex, our problems are very challenging, and collaborating to get the best of many people's potential and perspective is important. So I would say collaboration is the essential difference.
I completely agree with what Kali said. The women tend to collaborate with people, as we see the role of mothers in a family. And actually, I'd like to tell Kali, everybody in this room knows that Kali was a very successful and very powerful, influential businesswoman, and certainly involved in politics. And the Kali actually herself ran for the senator. And then I'd like to ask you, what prompted you to kind of transfer your career from private to public? And do you have any reason or any kind of incident that made you to convert your career?
So, first of all, I said that I think leadership is about making a positive difference. And so I try to make a positive difference every day. And that is why I have been very actively involved in philanthropy. I chair 2 major nonprofits. But in politics, I concluded that we had many, many politicians in the United States who make many decisions that impact the economy and business and companies, large and small. but that many of those same politicians actually didn't understand very well how the economy worked or what the impact of their decisions were on companies, large and small. Our nation, the United States, was actually founded on the tradition of what I would call citizen government. That is, that citizens came from private life and went into government and went back again to private life. And it's only been in the last maybe 40 or 50 years in the United States that we have come to have professional politicians who do nothing but politics. And I actually don't think it's been a good trend. I think all of us as citizens need to participate in the governance of our nation. And so that is why I got involved, because I thought I could make a positive difference.
I see. I'm very happy to hear that the Kali has a lot of things in common in kind of the reason why we converted our career from public to private. Actually, I had a similar experience when I was working as a general counsel at Citibank Korea. Before that, I was working as a lawyer at a law firm. And when I was a lawyer, I was just interpreting laws, the given laws. But when I was working as a general counsel at the Citibank, the private company, running the company, then I realized how important it is to make laws and to revise laws. And then at the same time, when I was seeing the newspaper article about the former president meeting the CEOs of the financial companies and declare that he will deregulate any unnecessary obstacles in the financial industry and want to make an advancement in the financial industry, I thought that I want to be the member of this mainstream and I want to be the member to change the order of this policy. And then accidentally, I got an offer from the party, why don't you work as a member of the National Assembly with us based on your experience as a lawyer and experience as a kind of managing general counsel. And I didn't hesitate much. I made a decision in a minute, and then actually that kind of rewarded what I thought. Then as being a National Assembly member, I could utilize what I experienced and what I thought as a businessman, a businesswoman, and then I can convert whatever I thought before into the policies and into the laws. And that was quite a rewarding and learning experience. And I completely agree with what Kali said. Everybody in our society, if we are to be a good citizen, we should be involved in politics and policy making in whatever forms, kind of voting, participate in voting, and or kind of give some comment, advice, or being a politician by ourselves.
And obviously the decision you made in a minute was a very good decision for you and for the nation of Korea.
Thank you so much. And I was very touched by us saying that being a good citizen is like help people by carrying themselves to help them to cross over the river. However, being a good politician is to build a bridge over the river so that many people without such a great labor can cross the river. That is the kind of role of the politician. And actually, the first time you visited Korea is in the year 1990. And then 25 years later, what do you see the difference in Korean society and Korean economy and Korean female in the society?
Well, the differences are quite vast, and I have always had great affection and admiration for the nation of Korea. I certainly said so in my book. And I told a story in my book about my first visit to Korea. I was meeting with a chaebol here in Korea. I was a young woman, but I was asked to negotiate a joint venture agreement with the president of a division of a chaebol here. And we met all day long, and at a certain moment, the president's chief of staff came to me and whispered in my ear and said, our president entertains in a traditional Korean fashion, and we would like to know, would you like a man? That was the question. I did not understand the reason for the question. And so I said, whatever the president would normally do will be fine. Well, we went on that evening to a traditional Gising party, barbecue with Gising girls, and that was, of course, a new experience for me, and I believe a new experience for my male colleagues, having a woman there. But it was a wonderful evening, and I came to have great admiration for the young women who helped me and were so gracious to me as hostesses. What has changed? I don't think that would happen in Korea today, probably, if I visited, although I'm not sure. Today, instead of only seeing young women as elevator operators and secretaries wearing white gloves in the building, we see a female president, a female minister. We see so many young and aspiring women in this audience. Korea has become a great nation, a leader in so many things, as we know. So many, many things have changed. And yet, for me, honestly, what has not, the reason I have great affection for this nation is, I must say, every time I have traveled here, and my husband Frank is with me, there is such a feeling of warmth and welcome whenever we come to Korea. I feel warmly welcomed here, and I very much appreciate that. So that is part of the Korean spirit that should not change.
I see. Actually, the empowering woman and utilizing the most unexploited resources, which is women, is the key issue, and is the kind of a shortcut to achieve the social inclusion and advancement. And actually, I realize that it is a international trend, and we have a momentum of hiring more women and encouraging women to participate actively in society. The OECD and IMF and all the economic international institutions are urging every country to hire, to raise the employment rate of women. Then, if they empower women, and then raise their employment rate of women to the level of the men's, then every country's GDP will be growing. And then Kali before, Kali mentioned that any country working well with women, any company working well with women, and any men working well with women, they are all smarter. And then I'd like to ask Kali, can you give us a little tip for the male audience in this room, how to well and better communicate and get along and utilize women, and how can we be more smarter?
Well, first let me say that the minister, when she speaks about the OECD encouraging all countries to employ more women, or when we see the emphasis on the inclusion of women here in Korea, or Prime Minister Abe's focus on women as a key to unlocking and growing the Japanese economy, all of that is because the data is very clear. When women are engaged, everything gets better. This has been followed for 40 years. When you get women engaged in economies, they grow faster. When you get women engaged in poverty alleviation, people eat better. When you get women engaged in disease eradication, literacy programs, conflict resolution. When women are engaged, things get better. The facts are very clear. And so that is why I say this is now about being smart. Being smart. Here's what I would say to answer your question specifically. It is human nature. It is human nature to be most comfortable with people like us. It is human nature for all of us and each of us to want to be with people like us because we understand each other. We communicate easily. We can finish each other's sentences. We speak the same language. And yet, I know, as a leader, that the best decisions are made. The most progress is made when people who are different from each other can work together. And so I would start by saying to the men, realize that women are different. We sometimes think differently than men. We may approach a problem differently than men. We may communicate differently than men. We may collaborate differently than men. Embrace the difference. Realize that the difference is what makes us stronger and better. And I would say the same thing to women. Don't get frustrated when men don't understand you the first time or when men approach a problem differently. They're different. When, you know, the best decision making happens in any setting. The best decision making happens when people who are different come together, think together about a common problem, put all of their diversity of point of view and perspective and experience all on the table, and together collaborate and come up with a common solution. That's when we are our strongest.
I see. Actually, I was advised to be a best moderator is to keep the time schedule. So I think we have almost done with the time we are allowed to share. And I'd like to tell Carly that in Korea, the employment rate of female in the 20s, in the generation of the 20s, and the college enrollment rate for the young women in Korea is higher than men for several consecutive years. However, it is very rare to see a female CEO in a large companies and the female management in the board meetings. And then I say that, I'm frequently said that by the male CEOs of the company that nowadays the young females are so much excellent, and then it's very hard for them to hire men associates, men entry-level young people. And then they ask me, why do we need a Ministry of Gender Equality? And why do we need some kind of policies to empower women? And I say to them, even though the spring has come at the foot of the mountaintop is covered with ice cap. And the ice cap, the perennial snow, is not melted by the spring breeze. It can be only melted by the body temperature of the women who are sitting on the ice cap. And I hope that unless Kali promises us that you will stay on the top of the mountain and then lead the female juniors and empower the younger generation, and then only after that, I will release you from this floor.
Well, I think your analogy, the way you explain this to people is so right, because the minister and I were speaking earlier today at breakfast, and I said one of her most important roles is to help people think differently. And sometimes you cause people to think differently by asking questions. You know, in the US, we have a tradition of including women that is a bit more advanced than here in Korea, but still, even in the United States, only 3% of the CEOs are women. So we still have a long way to go. But I think when people realize, men and women realize, that this now is about what I would call enlightened self-interest, that it is in everyone's interest that women be engaged. Everything is better when human potential is unlocked. Everything is better when women are more fully engaged. It's not about men losing and women winning. It's about everybody winning when everybody gets to play.
Thank you, Kali. I really enjoyed the talk with Kali this morning, and I hope that everybody in this audience enjoyed as much as I did. I think it's time to hand the microphone floor over to the moderator. Thank you, Kali.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fiorina, Your Excellency, for your thought-provoking dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen, please give them a round of applause. Now we would like to open the floor for a Q&A. Please raise your hand if you have questions for Ms. Fiorina or Her Excellency, and our staff member will hand over the microphone for you. Before you ask question, please identify yourself and to whom the question is directed to. Is there any question? Yes?
Good morning. It's been a great honor to see you ladies today. I'm a student from Jeju National University. I'm actually a freshman. I have a question here. I believe there's still gender discrimination remain in our society. So I wonder if you have experienced any gender discrimination, and if you have, how did you solve this problem and become a leader, as a female leader?
So good morning, and congratulations for asking the first question, always the most difficult. Yes, of course. We have experienced gender discrimination. I told you the small story of when I first went into business as something other than a secretary. My male colleague decided that we should have a meeting with our customers in a strip club. I don't know if this translates, but a strip club is where young women take their clothes off. So not such a nice environment for a young woman to try and do business. And he did this because he was trying to scare me. He was trying to scare me. It was a test. Despite my discomfort with the situation, I went. Because it was important that I say to him, "You will not scare me. I am here to do a job, and I will do my job." Sometimes women are tested in this way. And it's important. That's why I said women must be brave and must be strong. When you are being tested to see if you are strong enough and brave enough to do the job, you need to be brave and strong and pass the test. Also, however, I should finish that story and say that ultimately that colleague and I became very good friends and very good teammates. I did not hold this against him. I would also say that it's important to recognize that sometimes women are not given the presumption of competence. If you see a man in a job, you presume he is competent. When people see a woman in a job, they do not necessarily presume she is competent. And so the burden of proof rests on the woman. And this is why sometimes women have to work harder, do better, to be acknowledged as competent. They have to prove more. It is getting better, but that is still true. So men have to be smart and realize that helping young women succeed is good for men too. And women have to be brave and strong and realize that sometimes they will be tested in ways that men will not, and they will have to prove themselves over and over in ways that men do not.
Actually, as a minister in charge of the gender equality, actually, it is very important to get rid of all this legal or systematic discrimination in the society. But at the same time, while I was working as in this capacity, I realized that men and women have difference in every aspect. If we disregard that difference, that will lead to unintentional discrimination. So what the government and what the Ministry of Gender Equality should do is to help not to disregard these differences. The differences born by the men and women have, and the different environment and different society, different occasion that, or different responsibility that the men and women are faced, so that we can kind of get rid of all this discrimination. So these are the many policies that enables women not to quit their job while they are raising kids in their 30s and 40s. That is one way to get rid of all this actual discrimination in the career.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of time, we will take the last question. Is there anyone else who want to ask question? Yes?
Good morning. My name is Sarah Weissman, and I'm
Please use the microphone.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Weissman. I'm an MBA student from George Washington University in Washington, D.C. And I just have a question about balancing all of your work and professional responsibilities with your personal life, which is something that's been a hot topic in the United States over the past year or two. And as I've been here in Korea, I understand that it's also challenging for women to balance having a job and raising their families and ensuring that their children receive a good education. Can you talk a little bit about some of the policies or have any suggestions for women? Thank you.
Actually, the keeping balance between work and life is like a pendulum of a clock. So I think, and at the same time, it's like kind of juggling in a circus. I have to deal with a lot of balls at the same time, not to kind of have one of them drop down on the floor. The keeping the balance between work and life individually is to quit something. So if I want to be a 100% mother, perfect mother, and if I want to be the perfect kind of partner at the farm, then we should be a superwoman, and that is almost impossible. We have limited energy, limited resources, and limited time. So I would like to advise to reconcile, compromise in between the interests and demands that you are facing. But as a government officer, what I urge, one of my responsibility, as Kali told before, is to have those other cabinet members to think in a different way. They are working very hard every day, but I ask them to think about what impacts and what result will be made from their effort on women, and how they can help those working mothers keep the balance and help them not to disrupt their career. So that is one of my responsibility, and whenever I am attending a cabinet meeting, I raise questions about these gender-responsive perspective so that I can help. We are saying that we have one ministry for women and 16 other ministries for men, but that's not because they are bad, but they have no experience and they have no kind of past experience of thinking in a different way. So that's what our current government is working on.
And I would just add two quick things. One, thankfully today, we live in an era where technology permits so much more flexibility. And so I would say, using technology to its fullest to permit women to balance more is really a great opportunity. Flex time, job sharing, all these things now are made possible by technology, and so that's a great opportunity. I would also say, just at a personal level, that the most important, work-life balance still is harder for women. The most important choice you make every single day is how to spend your time. Because how you choose to spend your time becomes your life. And so I would just say, be thoughtful about it. Women are very responsive to demands, and everyone is demanding something. Be thoughtful about the choices you make on how to spend your time. Choose for yourself. One of the things that I do routinely and have done for many, many years is at the end of each month and at the end of each year, I look at my calendar and I assess, how have I chosen to spend my time? And do I like how I am spending my time? Is it the right balance of all the various things? So be deliberate about it. Be thoughtful about it. How you spend your time becomes your life. So choose it carefully.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to close the Q&A session. Ms. Fiorina, Your Excellency, thank you so much for the wonderful session. Ladies and gentlemen, please give them a round of applause. Ms. Fiorina, could you remain on stage for a photo session? Thank you, Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, before we close, we would like to have a photo opportunity with Ms. Fiorina. I would like to invite those of you who want to take photos with her to the stage. Don't miss the opportunity to take photos with Ms. Carly Fiorina and Ms. Cho. Anyone? I would like to invite every one of you on the stage.